What was your first encounter with Mark? How did you first hear about his story?
I stumbled upon the documentary, and once I'd seen it, I couldn't get it out of my head. So I started doing some research to figure out who had the rights to it, if anyone was doing anything more with the story, and found out that Robert Zemeckis had optioned it and had written a script. So I contacted him. I'd never met him before, so that was a little bit intimidating to kind of throw my hat in the ring and say, "Hey,
Are you
I'm
casting this thing?
exactly." So yeah, it's the first time I've ever done that, but it moved me and it stuck with me.
One of the things that Bob has done is bring the stories that Mark has told to life. And Mark made his own movies and told his own stories. At the very first conversation with Bob, was it clear that he was going to divide the film into these imagined scenarios and then what we'll describe as real life? Was that always his idea, that he was going to bring those stories to life through whatever animation techniques he
It
used?
was, and the reason, the explanation he gave was that why, and I agreed with this. Why just do a movie that is the cinematic version of the documentary? It had to expand his world in some way, and Bob is very good at telling his vision. It's because it's hard to imagine on your own what something's going to look like, but he's so specific in the way he lays out the story and lays out the pictures for you. So I love the idea of using his expertise to bring that doll world to life.
At what point did you meet Mark? Was it before you started work on the film? And
They had agreed to make the film, and Bob and I went to New York to meet with him and spend some time at his home. He lives in upstate New York, so we met there a couple of months before we started shooting, and spent some time with him.
what did you take away from those meetings? What were
He
your impressions
he
of him?
could not have been a nicer person. He's very shy. He's very self-deprecating. He has a great sense of humor, but I think what struck me most was that he just lacks any sort of cynicism, which is one of the reasons I wanted to do the movie. Is that I think in our world today we're surrounded by mostly cynical images and thoughts, and this was a person completely lacking in that, and that moved me and struck me, especially in the face of what had happened to him. The victim of his hate crime, and he was able to come out the other side and channel all of that anger and pain into something really beautiful and kind and productive.
Among the many horrible things that happened to Mark is that he didn't have a lot of insurance, and he was actually sent out of the hospital before he was well because whatever coverage he had was going to go away. He didn't have access to therapy. He didn't have things beyond, the basic things that got him going again. So how did he figure out that this was going to be something that could help him heal?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how he figured it out, or whether it was just some sort of intuitive response that he had, that he needed to keep his mind occupied. He couldn't use his hands anymore, but he needed to use his imagination. And I think, and in talking to him, one of the things he said is that he works at it every day, and it's been years since his attack, but he works at it. He challenges his brain. He knows that the brain is a very resilient thing and can make connections around the connections that were destroyed. So he challenges himself and forces himself to work at it, and he did it within something that he really loved to do, and was able to, not only just in terms of his dexterity, in terms of his trying to keep his mind agile, it was also a way of channeling that anger, creating these scenarios in which he was this heroic, powerful figure that could get some sort of redemption.
Could you talk a little bit about the physical production, about how you put the film together, at what point Bob is doing what we'll call the animated sequences, how he's using voice actors, how you yourself are behaving in those scenes, and then where does that come in sequence to the actual live physical production?
We did all of the live action stuff first, and then halfway through production, we all got into very tight gray jumpsuits and got into a big room that was all green with a lot of
A motion
cameras.
capture stage?
Motion capture stage, and they all sensors picking up everything you did, and it's the creepiest thing ever. Such a strange experience, but it was fun at the same time because you just got to use your imagination. As he put it to me, it's black box theater at its most bare bones. There's no set, there's no
Right. You might have
props.
steps, but you don't really have any physical props,
No,
right?
no. So it's all X's on the wall, and you're kind of imagining things going on around you. But it was fun.
In editorial, you might have, additional dialogue replacement. You might come back and change things. Is there any way to change a motion capture performance, or is that something that Bob does without you? And you say, I don't remember doing that or acting that way. It's like, yeah, I did. I changed it for
Well,
you.
that is actually one thing. I said, could you make me do something that I didn't do? And he said, oh, yeah, for sure. That's terrifying. Like the thought. So if I didn't smile wide enough in a shot, you could just add more smile. He's like, yeah, I could do that if I felt like it. But I don't think he did that. We did go back and pepper it with a couple of other shots later on. And technically, I don't know how they blend that in, how they fold it in. It's weird because we shot all this stuff on this motion capture stage, and there's the conventional monitors and people, the script supervisor, all of those people. But then literally behind a curtain were another 30 people on computers who were manipulating the avatars of our doll bodies. So you could go back and watch a playback of a very rough animation of the doll body in the doll world to kind of get your geography.
What were the most important parts about Mark that you wanted to represent as an actor? What did you want to capture, and were some parts of that more difficult than others?
First and foremost, his kindness and his generosity and his resilience. He, after all of this, the fact that he came out the other side and it isn't bitter. He exudes this warmth, but also his sense of humor. And it was very important that his love of shoes was a part of the movie because that speaks to why there was a hate crime in the first place. And I think no one wanted to take that component away because I think it's extremely important. And and you touched on it briefly, the way he really idealizes women. Women are, and he made this very clear, women are the closest people in his life. The person who found him, left for dead, was a woman. All of that's true. All the people who nurtured him, brought him back to health, continued to help him. All people he trusts most in the world, his confidants. He derives a great deal of strength and power from women. And I think that was an important aspect of who he is because he identifies on such a deep level with women and has such a love and respect and affinity for them. That was an important aspect.
What is he doing now? Is he still have this Belgian town out in his backyard?
You know what? The good news is he boxed it up. He doesn't need it anymore. He told us, it's in boxes behind his trailer. He has other things. He has other scenarios. I told him a story about the first Academy Awards that I was asked to be a presenter. So my wife and I are walking the red carpet, and I stepped on a star's dress, and she screamed at me like, "What the hell?" Literally like, "What are you doing?" And I shriveled up into a little ball. I was terrified, and I told Mark who it was. And then about 2 weeks later, he started sending me photographs of that exact scenario. And it was me on the red carpet going, ah! And it was his star with this face, and it really photorealistic. It was perfect. So it's like now he's moved on to...
Wait, did you forward that to the actress?
No.
Not yet.
Not.
Okay,
No.
not yet. Keep going.
No. No. But there's such a joy in him. Like he takes things like that and then he turns them into, he uses his world, he uses his imagination. And I got a call from him when the first trailer came out, and he left a very cryptic message and said, "Hi, Steve, it's Mark, call me." And I thought, oh, shit, he didn't like it. He doesn't like the way this looks. He doesn't like, and I got nervous because That's really all I care about. At the end of this is that he feels good about what we did, and I called him back immediately, and he said, "I saw the trailer. I've watched it 12 times. I've cried every time." And he's like, "I love it. And that world, like I would have done that if I could have done that. Like that's the door that you had leading up into the thing." And he was so excited and just was so warm about it. And again, that generosity. Here's the thing too. And Bob talked to him and said, there are going to be liberties taken. It's not going to be exactly, what you did. Not exactly, a lot of it, and he completely understood because he's an artist himself, and he understands that as an artist, Bob Zemeckis was going to expand this one side of it and turn it into something, through his imagination and kind of take the ball and run with it a little bit further.
Steve, great to see you. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
bringing us your films.